And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 104. Conor, 104 episodes. My goodness. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. It has been a very busy week. I mean, really freaking busy week. Dev Camp's always kind of busy, but then you throw on Jim Montgomery intro presser. You also throw in free agency. We're waiting on Krejci and Bergeron. Just the list goes on. And we're recording this before Friday, and Friday will be the scrimmage. That's like the big development camp day. Right. That's the most important day of development camp because we get to see how these guys do. Because, the past week, for people who don't go to dev camp, it's very much first couple of days are drills, some bag skates, edge work and stick handling. And, today, Thursday, there were some battle drills. And then Friday is like the big day. That's when you get to really see stuff. So not a lot of dev camp in this episode, just because there are other things that, we need to talk about. And I mentioned a little bit of it in the start of what I just said, in the sense that are there any concerns as we sit here and wait for Patrice, Bergeron, David Krejci? Because we've been, we thought, there've been reports for many weeks now. Joe McDonald had reported a few weeks ago that Bergeron was officially coming back, that it was happening. And that's where it seems to be headed. The best part of the Bergeron stuff is all these draft picks have been saying, oh yeah, Patrice Bergeron called me. He said he's excited to play with him. And like Pavel Zacha on Thursday was like, I can't wait to play with him in training camp. So seems like he's coming back. It's just like, when is this happening? And should people be concerned about Bergeron and Krejci, the news not being announced yet?
Yeah, I don't think it's time to, hit the button, go to DEFCON 1, right? I think Bruins fans were hoping that as soon as free agency started on Wednesday, that, the Bruins are going to have these contracts all set, tied together with a nice little bow, and have them ready to drop at 12:03, PM on Wednesday. Hasn't been the case. I don't know. I wouldn't put that as, I know for a lot of Bruins fans, your first instinct is just to immediately panic and be like, oh, they're far apart in contracts or in terms of money or what have you. I don't really think it's that. I think it's more of the fact that the Bruins kind of have to get their ducks in a row in terms of financially, whether it's moving out a contract or freeing up some money somehow. Because, let's just say, for example, they move a guy like Mike Riley, right? If you want to trade Mike Riley, probably do that before you sign Krejci and Bergeron and put yourself over the salary cap, because all of a sudden you have no leverage. If you are all of a sudden sitting at $86-87 million, and then you're like, all right, you guys want Mike Riley? A team that maybe even wants him. Let's say it's Arizona, Chicago, what have you.
Vancouver.
Yeah, Vancouver. Yeah, a guy that could actually use not a team that's kind of tanking like Chicago. But for them, what's the incentive when you know that the Bruins need to get under that cap limit? So I guess when also Don Sweeney and every single prospect has talked about like the inevitability of Bergeron coming back, kind of hurts your leverage a little bit. But I imagine the Bruins just want to take care of that part of it first, as opposed to adding more headaches further down the line when it comes to freeing up that cap space. So I wouldn't necessarily panic. Again, I think it would have been ideal if you didn't have to worry about that. Almost like how Tampa free agency starts and all of a sudden they lock up like, Cirelli, Sergachev, and Chernak right away. That makes it a lot easier, right? You're not stuck in this kind of state of limbo they're in right now. But I don't think it's something where something's all of a sudden gone wrong and they're trying to pick up the pieces. At least that's the hope. Because if that is the case, they're in trouble because everyone's already signed and they have no cap space. So you hope it's just the fact they're trying to take care of other kind of errands along the way before they have those guys sign at the dotted line.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Bergeron, and I'm not super worried about Krejci, but there's a part of me with Krejci that feel the way his personality is, the way he operates, that I could almost see him negotiating with them one day, and then the next day waking up and being like, I don't really want to come back. I don't know why I was doing all that.
Too many checks.
Really too many checks with Zacha now too, and Studnička. Bruce Cassidy used to say. This was a joke we were having in the press box on Thursday morning. But I'm not worried about it. I wouldn't sound the alarm. But there's a part of me that's like, wouldn't shock me if that were the case, just given the way he is. But again, I'm just curious what's taking so long, because I know Bergeron's making a decision whether or not he wants to come back. I know both of them are, but an interesting thing was Sweeney mentioned he had multiple conversations with Krejci on Wednesday, the day of free agency. what were the conversations? Like, and granted, you just say, hey, just check in. Yeah, boom. Off to a bad start. But you look at, like, you think about, like, is he like, hey, like, where you at now? Hey, where you at? Like, what is, like, are they negotiating a price? That's what I'm wondering with both of them. Like, are they now to the point where they're both coming back, but the price is what they are trying to, the incentives? Because as Sweeney said, they're probably going to have to do very incentive laden deals, given the salary cap issue they have. Another thing that makes me think even they are a little worried about this, the Zacha trade, Pavel Zacha, because Pavel Zacha, obviously, prior to the 12 p.m. Free agency start, Pavel Zacha was traded. Erik Haula traded for him. Goodbye, Erik Haula. Really, I mean, surpassed all expectations. Like, they sold high on Haula.
Easily. Yeah.
Good for them. But my takeaway was Zacha's an insurance policy, not just for the top six when Marchand's out to begin the year, but if David Krejci decides he doesn't want to play or he doesn't want to come back, or Patrice Bergeron says, you know what, I'm done, I'm retired. Is he the most ideal candidate? Is he the best number 2 center? No, he is not. But at the very least, you could plug him in there as maybe an Erik Haula with the chance of real potential, they feel like, as opposed to if they just kept Haula and said, well, we figure what we're going to get out of him. So in Zacha, I feel like they got an insurance policy and they sold high on Erik Haula. So to me, I actually like this trade. What did you think?
Yeah, no, I like it too. I think it is one thing where definitely as a 25-year-old guy who can play at the center position, it's his natural position. You're right that it is an insurance policy. Still not the best one, right? Like I don't think you're trading for him. No. Even like let's look at Erik Haula. Like you kind of, even though we've both said that the Bruins wanted to improve, you can't have Haula at 2C. That being said, we do know that he can play that spot and he can drive play alongside guys like David Pastrnak and Taylor Hall. So I don't think even though it makes logical sense that you're moving Haula, a guy with 1 year left, for a younger player in Zacha, if the Bruins' intention was to just swap those guys out, there's risk involved with that in terms of expecting him to just, all right, he's going to be with Pastrnak and Hall, he's going to do great. Like there's no guarantee of that, especially when compared to a guy like Haula. So I think it's like most of this offseason, I think it's probably what is frustrating Bruins fans. I think you can't give the full grade on Zacha until these other pieces fall into place, right? Because if he is your 2C, then you're like, okay, maybe at that point we should have just signed a guy like Strome or something like that, as opposed to a guy like Zacha, who it's good, not great, especially in what his role is. Now, if Bergeron and Krejci are both back, and Zacha
which is the likely scenario.
It's what we imagine, and he's maybe in the top 6 to start the year just because Marchand's out. But if you get to December and January and it's Zacha down on the third line with Charlie Coyle and Craig Smith, and you got your top 6 in place as we've kind of mapped it up before. There's a lot to like about that. Like I think Zacha, if he's put in a role like that with a puck possession center like Coyle and a shot first guy like Smith, makes plenty of sense. Like the kind of the book on Zacha is 6'3" forward, not necessarily a bruiser, but can get into inside ice. His finishing numbers have been so, but really good transition player. So it kind of falls in line with what we heard about Montgomery. I think you talked about it on a podcast of his methods in terms of crafting lines is having a good transition guy, a good possession guy, and a good finisher. Kind of have that there if you're looking at that third line. So I agree that it was a crafty move by the Bruins in terms of adding a younger guy that maybe is a little bit more versatile and could be really effective in that third line. But it's all going to depend on what their long-term plans are and where he exactly fits in the lineup. Because again, if it's him between Hall and Pastrnak, he'll probably be productive. You're going to have talent there, but if he's down on the third line, getting better matchups and hopefully getting more out of Coyle and Smith in the process, then I think that's a win-win in terms of where he kind of best fits in this lineup.
That is an interesting thing with Zacha, though, that they really do think that he has this much higher ceiling. And again, that's kind of been the MO on his whole career. Like, I think the Devils just kept waiting and waiting and waiting. It just never came. And it's funny, in the video for Bruins Ringside, I actually talked about how in some ways, and this is going to get people to kind of go like, ooh, but like Coyle, in a sense, the Bruins have been waiting and waiting and waiting to produce on the ice. I mean, like everything aside from production, Coyle has been great, but production wise, they've been just kind of like all right, when are you going to hit like 50 points, 60 points? I think there's that same thing with Zacha. Maybe if you put them together, like they cancel each other out and they just start producing like crazy. I mean, who knows?
80-point seasons.
80-point season, baby, coming up for a third line, most ever. An interesting thing about free agency day, judging by the contracts, probably not the worst thing in the world that the Bruins were not the most active team there. Now, they also couldn't be. See, the salary cap being full for them is a blessing and a curse. It's a curse because you can't really do anything, but it's a blessing because you can't sign any terrible contracts, which were everywhere on Wednesday. It is amazing to me how every year there's bad contracts, right? Like obviously the most notorious one was summer 2016 when you had Lucic, you had David Backes, you had there's a couple with Detroit. Was Franz Nielsen one of them?
I think so. That was one, right?
It was
the off season where the Detroit more or less made it add another 2 or 3 years onto their rebuild in terms of instead of like ripping it up then and doing a clean slate, dragged it out, and then only right now they started to bounce back in 2022.
Yeah, so in some ways a pretty good thing that the Bruins were not super active. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. It's one of those ones where you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? In terms of, all right, it's good they didn't have cap space, so they didn't sign Goodbranson or someone like that, or even like Nick Delorier, who, again, I think if he's signed to a reasonable deal, has value for a team that maybe just wants that extra bite on their roster as kind of a spare pot, but not a 4-year contract, right? Like that's the thing. It's all about the term and the annual payout, I think, is a bigger issue. But then you look at some other guys like Noah Chari, who got 1 year, 1.25, which I found crazy.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah, for all of the contracts that you immediately point to, I think everyone focuses in on the overpays or the long-term deals that right from the get-go aren't going to pan out. Whether it's guys like Achari who kind of fell through the cracks, or guys that kind of suddenly jumped into the free agency market late because of all those qualifying offers that weren't issued out. There was a lot of value to be had, I think, for teams that wanted to just maybe add another spare pot, whether it's on the third or fourth lines, third pairing. Jan Ruta went for a pretty affordable deal, I think, to Pittsburgh, as someone you mentioned before. So as much as you want to look at, the Goudreaus of the world or all those guys, Goudreau, who also, one, hilarious that he went to Columbus, but also didn't exactly break the bank. I think people thought he was still going to get 10.5, 11, which might mean a good thing for David Pastrnak. But other than that, or for the Bruins, I guess, in terms of, signing him to an affordable deal. Plus, is going to get paid regardless. Anyway, I digress. But I think you look at the Bruins and even if you weren't going to be able to afford to sign a guy like Mason Marchment, who went for 4.5, which I was kind of surprised that he got that payout, or, they weren't going to sign a guy like Palat, who's making $6 million a year. There were so many other guys, even look at what Strome just signed with Washington at $3.5 million.
I was going to say Dylan Strome.
There's a lot of guys out there who are useful, bottom 6 players or third pairing guys that would have fit in what the Bruins would need if it's just adding extra depth or an extra scoring piece. But when you're, have $4 million in cap space after the Holla trade, and you still have to sign Bergeron and Krejci, as we expect or predict, along with Zacha's new contract. People kind of forget that he's an RFA, so you have to lock him into a deal, and who knows what that's going to be. I think you mentioned the qualifying offer might have been $3 million around then. So
it was $3 million.
So what, 3.5, 4? Like
I was thinking like somewhere between 3.1 and like 3.56. Yeah, that's what it should be. Mm-hmm. That does not mean that's what it will be.
Right.
So I think that's an interesting thing to decipher.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I look at sort of the bad deals. I always like to focus on the bad deals, and it's like, oh, it's good you couldn't do that. But there, as you said, there was value out there. The Gaudreau thing is interesting because I swore I saw somewhere on Twitter. I could have like gotten tricked by like Ballsack Sports or something. Who knows?
Wouldn't be the first one.
It definitely would not be the first. But someone tweeted out that Columbus's initial offer was around like $12 million per year. I swore I saw that somewhere. Again, I shouldn't be just like spitballing this.
I feel like I saw that as well. From like, I want to say it was from a pretty established NHL source. So
it was.
I don't think it was.
So that's why I was so surprised when it was like 9.75 when it came in at like, wow. And again, good for Columbus though. Like that's an interesting, like good for freaking them. And you know, anyone who's been to Columbus always says like it's a cool city. You know, like the fans are super. I've never been to Columbus. Ohio does not entice me whatsoever. No offense. If you're from Ohio, like more power to you. I mean, like freaking credit to you. You're awesome.
That should be the Ohio State slogan is freaking credit to you. It's like they're like visit Ohio or like, you know, get like a thing to get like a rebate to stay
Maine,
in Ohio.
the way life should be.
Yeah.
Ohio, credit, props to you.
Yes.
But anyways, free agency comes and goes. The one thing I would have liked to see the Bruins do, and again, they don't have the cap space, but I would have liked to see them shore up the right side a little bit more. Connor Carrick was the only kind of right shot defenseman they got. He splits time between the AHL and the NHL, which I guess in some ways is you don't want a guy. I mean, maybe they don't want a guy who's going to constantly have to be in the lineup every night. Like a Jan Ruta would have probably had to have been in the lineup every single night. Yeah. And when you're battling with Clifton, who also wants to be in there and you're paying him. So maybe they went with the right thing there, but I still would have liked them to shore it up a little bit more. Given the market, Mark Pissick was the guy that I kept also looking at. Like, I know he's an analytics darling, but like, dude played pretty well last year in Buffalo and gets paid like nothing. I think it was $850,000. Yeah. I don't know where, I forget where he signed, but I still think that he would have been a good ad for this team because you could have used him sparingly if needed. Okay, now we talk development camp, the thing that's been happening all week. I feel bad for the kids. You know, they can't get the coverage they deserve. We're going to give that to them now. And there will be some more on Friday. So who is the prospect that has stood out to you the most through 4 days?
I think the one guy that does stand out to me, and it's maybe a little bit misleading because he's not actually a drafted Bruins prospect, but Riese Gaber, who is a camp invite. He's going into his junior year at University of North Dakota. Again, it feels like every year, some of the more intriguing guys that are in a depth camp are the guys who were invited. And Gaber's the latest one. Very small player. I think he's 5'8". Certainly looks like it on the ice. Not a big guy, but has been really impressive in battle drills, fighting through contact. You can tell he's one of those guys that makes the most of his frame in terms of, you know, staying on his skates, tough to knock around, really good edge work. They do that small area drills that we've always seen the Bruins do where they get the nets enclosed, and he was a pro at that, going up against much bigger guys, evading contact, bringing the puck into high danger ice. Has been really good on the rush. There's been a few rushes with him and Beecher where they both kind of turned on the afterburners, and a few of the Bruins goalies at Dev Camp have not had a fun time when he's been out there. So again, there's no guarantee that showing up at Dev Camp as an invitee means that you're the team's all of a sudden the leader in the clubhouse, for as much as you look at a guy like Mark McLaughlin, who was a really good performer last year as an invite, also a BC guy from Billerica. Kind of put two and two together there. You can look at last year, probably the best player at Dev Camp for the Bruins was Ben Myers, who was far and away probably the best collegiate free agent.
I forgot Ben Myers was at Dev Camp last year.
And he was awesome. He was legit the entire time. And that was one where people were immediately like, oh, the Bruins are going to be the favorites to get this guy. And he goes to Colorado. Not everyone's going to Columbus. Yeah.
Everyone's running to Columbus.
Everyone was smitten by the Columbus Zoo and they're all going there. But no, Ben Myers goes to Colorado. So there is no guarantee there in terms of just because you show up to a Dev Camp, you're going to land with whatever team ends up being. But if you're the Bruins, it's all about making inroads there, whether you're learning more about the players learning more about the staff, the facilities there. It's almost like a recruit visit, right? Where you kind of check out the facilities, all those things. The city, and you can keep in touch with them.
Castle Island, maybe have a hot dog.
Go to Sully's. I mean, that's what I would do. If I was like a coach or anything like that, I wanted to recruit someone, just bring them to Sully's. There's nothing to do with the programs at all. But yeah, so for the Bruins, it's about being proactive, making a good impression, and then hopefully when North Dakota's season ends and he's a guy like Gaber is evaluating his options, Bruins are probably going to be right there in the mix at the very least, which if that's what you do and you're putting yourself in that position, that's what has to be done to get some of these college free agents. And again, we'll see how he would develop in the NHL, but adding a guy like him to the pool of prospects we have can only make you guys a lot better. So I think he's a guy that's definitely stood out to me over the first 4 days.
Some of the best kids that come into the NHL are often undrafted kids from college. That is how it works. So Myers, I was going to bring up anyways. I totally forgot he was at Dev Camp last year. I'm just saying, like, the same situation he's in. So I'm looking at his stats right now. Again, at a solid freshman year, 21 points, 29 games. This year, only 9 games, but 11 points.
Yeah.
Wouldn't shock me if he had a really good junior year and he had a similar thing with Ben Myers, where like everyone's eyes are like, what's Riese Gaber going to do? You know, and again, he still has another year after this if he wants. Maybe with the size he wants to, but I still think like if the press tour with him is starting off well now and he has a good junior year, like then maybe you do immediately sign with the team and go to the NHL and capitalize on it. I'll go with Georgii Merkulov, who was everyone's favorite on Tuesday. Definitely fun to talk to. His personality is fun. His English is terrific.
Yeah.
It's wild that he learned it that quickly, learned it through the Big Bang Theory, which is just like, hell yeah. I mean, like Petrov McGuire had a great tweet. It was like, is he going to yell like Bazinga after every goal he scores?
That's what he should do.
He should. No, I completely agree with that. But again, he was, signed out of college only after 1 year from Ohio State. Interesting case with him. Because again, the center depth is going to be tested in the coming years. This kid looks offensively terrific. Defensively, even he admits that he needs to work on some things. And Ryan Mujanel said as much, and I believe McQuaid said as much throughout this week as well.
I feel like we have to watch like some Providence games to see like just his D zone work, because the fact that everyone just like, oh yeah, like you got to talk about him. Like, terrible. Like what is he doing out there? Like, I'm sure he's gonna work on it, of course, and he's good that he's being candid about it. But like, what happened in those like short Providence games that everyone's like, oh he has details. It's like right away. It's like,
okay, we don't talk about that here. I mean, yeah. Jesus, like whoa. Yeah. It's interesting with him. And it's interesting with the Bruins, because if there's one team that does not take well to kids who don't know the D zone well, it is your Boston Bruins. So it is interesting that they're going through this with him. Then you know what that means? They must really freaking believe in this kid, because they have passed on guys in the draft before because they're not defensively sound. They do not sign guys out of college who are not good in their own zone. But this changed that. He is so skilled offensively. You see it in like every drill. He is terrific. So someone you got to watch, and someone I'm going to have my eye on, and I think everyone should have their eye on in Providence this year. And it's funny, people were asking him, about expectations for this upcoming year, because you never know if we see him up with the big club during the winter. I don't think he's going to make the team out of camp, but I would not be surprised to see him make his NHL debut sometime during the year, especially if he's playing well. So that would be my pick. Riley Duran's been very good. Ty Gallagher's gotten a lot of eyes on him. I think the real thing's going to be the scrimmage on Friday. That's when people are going to get to really see. And what's amazing is, unless 37 and 46 get signed, nothing can distract us from this. We get to just watch the scrimmage. There's nothing from the outside. There's no big news, hopefully, maybe. So we will see. But Conor, what can people look forward to from you over at Boston Sports Journal?
Yeah, we'll have you covered every step of the way this offseason, which hopefully is going to slow down a little bit in the coming weeks. But regardless of any breaking news, all that stuff, we'll have you covered every step of the way, whether it's further takeaways from Dev Camp, projecting the roster for the upcoming season, any potential cap clearing moves, all that good stuff will be over at BSJ. So please subscribe at bostonsportsjournal.com. Want to follow me on Twitter? You can do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. Poke the Bear. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That's Conor Ryan. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your day.